The girl was 7 years old, and she had been sitting alone in the airport terminal for 23 minutes before anyone noticed. That was the part that bothered Denny Pruett the most. Afterward, not what she said to him, not the way she grabbed the sleeve of his jacket like she was afraid he would dissolve if she let go, but the fact that she had been sitting there alone for nearly half an hour in one of the busiest terminals in the country, and every single adult who walked past had looked straight through her. Denny noticed because he always noticed things like that. It was an occupational habit. When you spent 15 years diagnosing problems that other people had already given up on, turbine faults, pressure leaks, stress fractures invisible to the naked eye, you developed a particular kind of attention. You learned to look at what wasn't moving when everything around it was. The girl wasn't moving. She was sitting on a hard plastic chair near gate 14, her feet not quite reaching the floor, her small hands folded in her lap with a precision that looked practiced. She had dark hair pulled into two braids, and she was wearing a yellow raincoat even though it hadn't rained in 2 weeks. She wasn't crying. She wasn't looking at her phone. She was just sitting, watching the crowd move past her with an expression that Denny recognized in a way he couldn't immediately name. He stopped walking. He was supposed to be at gate 19 in 11 minutes. His flight to Columbus was the last one out that night, and he had a meeting at the Hargrove plant at 7 the next morning. A compressor failure they'd been chasing for 6 weeks, the kind of intermittent fault that made engineers crazy because it only showed itself when it wanted to. His supervisor, Reginald Aldrich, had been very clear about the timeline. Denny stood in the middle of the moving crowd and looked at the girl in the yellow raincoat. He thought about his daughter, Wren. Wren was 9 now, staying with his mother in Akron while he was on the road. He called her every night at 8:30. She always picked up on the first ring, which meant she was always waiting, which was something he tried not to think about too hard. He walked over to the girl. "Hey," he said, crouching down so he wasn't towering over her. "You doing okay?" She looked at him with clear gray eyes, not frightened, assessing. "I'm waiting," she said. "For who?" "My dad." She paused. "He went to get coffee." That was a long time ago. Denny looked around. There was a coffee kiosk about 40 feet away, currently serving a line of maybe 8 people. No one was looking in their direction. "How long is a long time?" he asked. She considered this seriously. "Longer than it takes to get coffee." He sat down in the chair next to her, not hovering, not crowding, just sitting, the way you sit next to someone on a bus, present without being a problem. "I'm Denny," he said. "What's your name?" "Lotte," she said. "With an E, Charlotte?" "Just Lotte. My mom picked it." Something moved across her face, brief and then gone. "She's not here anymore." Denny didn't say he was sorry. He had learned a long time ago that's just something people said when they didn't know what else to do. Instead, he said, "My daughter's name is Wren." Lotte turned to look at him more fully. "Like the bird?" "Exactly like the bird." "That's a good name," she said. Then, almost as an afterthought, "You smell like my dad used to." Denny wasn't sure he'd heard her right. "I smell like your dad?" "Used to," she said, with the careful precision of a child who has learned to distinguish between present and past tense as a matter of survival. "Before. Like motor oil and that orange soap." She looked down at her folded hands. "He doesn't smell like that anymore. He smells like the office." Denny didn't say anything. He understood, in the particular way of a man who had changed his own life, in ways he hadn't entirely chosen, what it meant for a person to start smelling like the office. They sat together for a moment in the noise of the terminal. "He's in the coffee line," Lotte said, as if reminding herself. "He's just getting coffee." "I can see the line from here," Denny said. "You want me to stay until he gets back?" She looked at him sideways. Then she nodded, very slightly, the way children nod when they want something, but have been told too many times not to want too much. Denny stayed. He found out later that her full name was Charlotte Elise Voss Drummond, and that her father was Preston Drummond, and that Preston Drummond was, depending on which publication you read, either a visionary entrepreneur or a ruthless consolidator, the kind of man whose name appeared in headlines next to words like acquisition and restructuring and strategic realignment, which were all different ways of saying that other people lost their jobs so that Preston Drummond's quarterly numbers looked better. Denny did not know any of this when he sat down next to Lotte. He learned it in pieces over the following 20 minutes as the coffee line moved and didn't move, and finally produced Preston Drummond himself, a tall man in a charcoal suit carrying 2 cups and a phone pressed between his ear and his shoulder, moving through the crowd with the automatic confidence of someone accustomed to being given space. He saw Lotte. He saw the man sitting next to Lotte. He stopped. The phone came away from his ear. The warmth went out of his face so quickly it was like watching a light switch off. Lotte. His voice was level and controlled. Come here. Lotte slid off her chair and walked to her father. Preston Drummond put his hand on her shoulder without looking at her, because he was looking at Denny. Who are you? Denny stood up. He was about the same height as Preston Drummond, but they were different in every other way. Denny in his worn canvas jacket and work boots, Preston in his suit and his certainty. Denny Pruett, your daughter was alone. I sat with her until you got back. She wasn't alone. I was getting coffee. She was alone for 23 minutes. Something shifted in Preston Drummond's expression. Not guilt exactly, but a rapid internal calculation. Then the calculation resolved itself, and what replaced it was a particular kind of coldness that Denny recognized from boardrooms and performance reviews, and every interaction he'd ever had with men who were accustomed to defining situations on their own terms. I don't know you, Preston said. I don't know why you were sitting with my daughter or what you said to her. I don't know how you ended up next to her in the first place. I told you how. You told me a story. He looked Denny over in a way that was not subtle. The jacket, the boots, the calloused hands. I'd like you to step away from us now. Denny looked at Lotte. She was looking at the floor. Her hands were at her sides, and her shoulders were pulled slightly inward, and she had the particular stillness of a child who has learned that the best thing to do in certain moments is to take up as little space as possible. He knew that posture. He had seen it in Wren, in the months after her mother died, in the months when grief had made Denny clumsy and absent in ways he was still trying to repair. Sure, he said. He looked at Lotte one more time. Take care, Lotte with an E. She looked up, just for a second. Bye, she said quietly. He walked away. He made his flight. He sat in the middle seat and stared at the seat back in front of him and thought about Wren, about the way she picked up the phone on the first ring, about all the things he had not yet figured out how to fix. He didn't think about Lotte again until she called him. That was 3 weeks later. The number was one he didn't recognize, a 212 area code, and he almost didn't answer it. He was under a turbine housing at the time, his hands deep in a gear assembly that had been giving the Hargrove plant's night crew fits for 2 months. He answered it because something told him to. Is this Denny Pruett? The voice was small and careful and instantly recognizable. He sat up so fast he hit the back of his head on the housing. Lotte, yes. A pause. I got your number from the airport. My dad's assistant helped me. Please don't be mad. He wasn't mad. He was sitting on a concrete floor with gear grease on his hands and a ringing skull, and he wasn't even slightly mad. How did you know my name? He asked. You told me. I have a good memory. Another pause. My dad says that's not always a virtue. Denny didn't respond to that. He asked if she was all right, and she said yes, she was fine. She just wanted to say thank you, because she hadn't gotten to say it properly at the airport, and it had been bothering her. That was what she said. It had been bothering me. 7 years old, and she talked like someone who had been thinking things over carefully for a long time. They talked for 11 minutes. Mostly she asked about Wren. What grade was she in? What did she like? Did she have a dog? Denny answered all of it, and then he asked if her father knew she was calling, and there was a long enough pause that he had his answer. I should probably go, Lotte said. Yeah? He said, you probably should. Okay. A breath. My mom used to say that good people are always worth finding again. Denny sat very still on his concrete floor. She sounds like she was smart, he said. She was the smartest, Lotte said, and then she said goodbye and hung up. He thought about calling the 212 number back, thought about what he would say to Preston Drummond if he answered, thought about all the ways that conversation could go wrong. He didn't call. He drove home that weekend and took Wren to the diner on Maple she liked, the one with the bad coffee and the excellent pie, and watched her eat an entire slice of lemon meringue with the focused seriousness she brought to everything she loved. And he thought about a little girl in a yellow raincoat sitting very still in an airport, waiting. He didn't hear from Lotte again for 4 months. When he did, it wasn't a phone call. It was a Sunday morning in late October, and he was in his driveway with Wren, the two of them working on his truck's brake system. Denny doing the actual work, Wren handing him tools with great ceremony, and asking questions he answered as fully as he could, because he had decided a long time ago that there was nothing wrong with a 9-year-old understanding how things worked. A car pulled up to the curb, a very good car, the kind that didn't belong on his street, not because of the neighborhood, but because of what the car communicated about its owner, about the distance the owner had decided to put between himself and the rest of the world. Preston Drummond got out. He was wearing the suit again, or one very much like it. He stood on the sidewalk and looked at Denny's driveway with an expression that Denny couldn't immediately read. Mr. Pruett. Denny straightened up, wiping his hands on a shop rag. Mr. Drummond. Wren looked between the two of them with the alert, quiet attention of a child who senses that the adult conversation she's witnessing requires her to be invisible. You can wait inside if you want, Denny told her. The game's probably on. Wren took one more look at Preston Drummond, then went inside without a word. The screen door closed behind her. The two men stood in the driveway. She called you, Preston said. It wasn't a question, 4 months ago. Once, I know. I found the number in her call history. He paused. She didn't tell me. She's been carrying it around like a secret for 4 months. Kids will do that. Preston looked at the truck, at the tools laid out on the tarp, at the grease on Denny's hands. His expression had changed from the airport. The coldness was still there, somewhere underneath, but something else was there too. Something man that looked, around the edges, like a man who had been trying to hold a shape that kept changing on him. She talks about the man at the airport, he said. She doesn't say your name. She just says, the man at the airport. She says he smelled right. He stopped. Swallowed. Her mother was an engineer. Aerospace. She used to come home smelling like machine oil and coffee. He looked at a point somewhere over Denny's shoulder. Lotte was 4 when she died. She says she can't remember her mother's face very clearly anymore, but she still knows the smell. Denny didn't say anything. There was nothing to say that wouldn't be inadequate. She's been struggling, Preston said, in ways I don't. He stopped again. Started over. I run a company. I know how to identify a problem and move toward a solution. What I don't know how to do, he pressed his lips together, she needs things I don't know how to give her. Her therapist says she's searching for continuity. Something stable that reminds her of before, Mr. Drummond? Preston. Denny folded the shop rag. What are you asking me? The silence stretched between them. A car went past on the street. Somewhere down the block a dog was barking at something. I looked you up, Preston said, after the airport and then again after I found the number. You lost your wife too, 3 years ago. How did you? He didn't finish the sentence. I didn't, Denny said honestly. Not for a long time. I'm still working on it. He paused. But Wren helps. Having someone to be steady for helps. It gives you a reason to keep the shape. Preston Drummond looked at him for a long moment. He was not a man who showed uncertainty easily. Denny could see the effort it cost him, the way the admission had to fight its way past years of practiced control. She wants to see you again, Preston said. She hasn't asked. She doesn't ask for things. But I know her, and I know that she wants it. A pause. I'm not sure what that means, or what I'm supposed to do about it, or whether it's... He stopped. I drove an hour and 40 minutes to say that I don't know what I'm doing, which is not something I say very often. Denny looked at the truck. Then, at the house, where through the front window he could see the blue flicker of the television, Wren curled up on the couch with her feet tucked under her. "You want to come inside?" he asked. "Coffee's nothing special, but Wren made cookies yesterday and she'll want someone to eat them." Preston Drummond blinked. Whatever he'd been expecting, it wasn't that. Yes, he said. All right. They went inside. Wren looked up from the couch when they came in, taking in the stranger with the careful measuring gigs she'd inherited from somewhere Denny couldn't quite locate. Not him, not her mother, some third thing that was entirely Wren's own. "This is Preston," Denny said. "He has a daughter named Lotte. You'd like her." "Why?" Wren asked, not rudely, just directly. "Because she asks good questions and remembers everything," Denny said. Wren considered this. "Okay," she said, and moved her feet off the couch cushions so there was room. They stayed for 2 hours. Denny made coffee, and Wren produced the cookies, which were lemon and slightly overdone on the bottom. And Preston Drummond sat on a couch in a house that was nothing like anything he usually sat in and said very little, mostly watched and seemed, slowly, in increments, like a pressure release happening in stages, to let something go. Before he left, he stood in the doorway and looked at Denny with an expression that had none of the calculation of the airport, none of the control. "She's right," he said. "She's usually right." "About what?" "She told me after the airport. She said you were one of the good ones." He shook his head slightly, the way a man does when he's revising a conclusion he'd already filed away. "I thought she was 7 and didn't know what she was talking about." Denny nodded. "They usually know." Preston left. Denny stood in the doorway and watched the very good car disappear around the corner. Behind him, Wren said, "Are we going to see them again?" "I think so." "Good," she said. "I want to meet Lotte." He turned around. Wren was already back on the couch, feet tucked under her again, looking at the television with the particular serenity of a child who has decided that a thing is settled. He stood there for a moment, thinking about a yellow raincoat and a small voice saying, "Good people are always worth finding again," and thinking about how much a 7-year-old can understand that takes the rest of us decades. Then he went to the kitchen and washed his hands and started thinking about dinner. 6 weeks later, on a Saturday in December when the first snow of the year was threatening in the gray sky over Akron, the four of them met at a diner on the east side. Not the diner on Maple, a different one, neutral territory, a corner booth with red vinyl seats and a laminated menu and a pie case by the register that Lotte studied with the same focused seriousness that Wren brought to pie. They ordered without looking at the menus much. Wren got lemon meringue. Lotte, after lengthy deliberation, got cherry. The girls had been talking since the moment they sat down, in the seamless, assumption-laden way of children who have decided to be friends and are simply proceeding accordingly, without all the adult machinery of social anxiety and self-consciousness that would come later and that both Denny and Preston watched with something adjacent to envy. Denny drank his coffee. Preston drank his and looked at it and didn't say anything for a moment. "She stopped seeing the therapist," he said finally. Denny looked at him. "She said she wasn't sad in the same way anymore." Preston turned his cup in his hands. "I don't know if that's good or not. I don't know how to know. You can ask her," Denny said. "I know." He set the cup down. I'm getting better at asking." A pause. "It's harder than it looks." "Yeah," Denny said. "It is." Across the table, Wren was showing Lotte something on her phone, some video involving a dog doing something improbable, and Lotte was watching it with her head tilted slightly to one side, smiling in a way that made her look, just for a second, like someone who was remembering how to do it. Denny watched her and felt something he didn't have a clean word for. Not happiness exactly, or not only that. More like the feeling of watching a mechanism that has been misaligned find its way back to the right position. The small, quiet click of something that was wrong becoming less wrong. He thought about Wren picking up the phone on the first ring, always, every night at 8:30. He thought about the ways people searched for what they'd lost in the shapes that other things made. He thought about how long 23 minutes was, and how short, depending on where you were sitting. Outside the window, the first snow had started. It came down soft and straight in the windless air, the way snow did before the wind picked it up and made it mean something. Lotte noticed it first, looked up from the phone with her eyes wide, and said something to Ren, and Ren looked up too, and both of them turned to look out the window at the snow falling on the December street. Preston Drummond looked at his daughter's face. Denny looked at his. Neither of them said anything, because there wasn't anything to say that the moment wasn't already saying better. The pie sat on the plates. The snow kept coming down. Somewhere in the city a compressor was running perfectly, and somewhere else one was failing in a way that nobody had diagnosed yet, and the world was full of broken things and people trying to fix them, and some of the people trying to fix them were also broken, and some of the broken ones were better at their jobs than anyone gave them credit for. Lotte pressed her hand flat against the cold glass of the window, watching the snow. "My mom would have liked today," she said. Not to anyone in particular, not asking for anything, just saying a true thing out loud because it was true. Nobody told her she was wrong.